use of search in 2024. Is SEO dead? The reason I ask is because TikTok is increasingly being used as a search engine by consumers looking for information, recipes, music, and more, according to a new study by Adobe. In that study, Adobe surveyed 808 customers to glean insights from their TikTok search behavior. They also questioned 251 business owners, exploring the innovative ways that they're adapting their marketing to cater to customer search intent on TikTok. Here's some of the stats from that study. Over 2 in 5 Americans use TikTok as a search engine. Nearly 1 in 10 Gen Zers are more likely to rely on TikTok than Google as a search engine. More than half of business owners, 54%, use TikTok to promote their business, posting an average 9 times per month. 1 in 4 small business owners use TikTok influencers for product sales and promotions. However, to agree with you that SEO is not dead, 41% of the study have said they use TikTok as a search engine. But don't die on this. They were asked if they've ever used it. It's not necessarily for a platform.
Yes, it could be, any point they've used. That's like taking the same stat for, what was it we were picking on last week, Google Plus. We're like, did you know that 68% of millennials have used Google Plus, and therefore Google Plus is the new, Google. It's dead. It's data can say anything, right? If you shape it into the right mold. Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that. What are we questioning it at this point? What are we trying to ask?
Well, I think there's probably a lot of talk in the industry that TikTok and other search platforms, those being like YouTube, Instagram, etc., are being more utilised by younger people over Google search, and I'm interested in what the utility of that is.
Yeah, okay. So I think that bit's true. There's a lot of people. One thing we know for certain is there's loads of people using TikTok, same as the Meta products, right? It gets real cloudy when you start talking about have ever used it as a search engine, because that's people's self-professed usage, and we can't really delineate what they mean by they've used it as a search engine. Again, are they A-level students Googling for the facts about Tutankhamun or something like that? I've used it as a search engine for that purpose. Is that useful to the people who we work with, which is e-commerce, B2C, B2B, finance companies? No, not really, not unless you've got some tie-in Egyptian. Maybe if you're an Egyptian travel brand, maybe those stats can't tell us that it's particularly useful for a shopping journey. Obviously, TikTok has the shopping features now. There's a lot of affiliate stuff going on within it. There's a lot of visit my store link and things like that. But at that point, you're kind of tipping into influencer marketing. You're not really talking about search at that point. Fine, which is fine. That's the thing, right? I really don't believe a lot of the stats to say TikTok is the new search engine and Google is dead. I think all of the arguments have been massively lacking in nuance, where they've used one real big generic head term like bed or something like that and gone, well, look, there was more searches in this month for the term bed than there was in Google for the term bed. This may not be an actual example. I can't remember the actual terms we were looking at. But then completely disregards the fact that in Google, the length of the search and the variations of the search are just unknown numbers. They're absolutely huge. And there's so many different ways and so many different intent levels that people would search through Google compared to TikTok. And again, the only data I've seen is that there's just one keyword that's slightly bigger, and that's been the argument to make that TikTok has all of a sudden overtaken it.
Interesting you mentioned about the intent behind searches on TikTok and the likes. The previously mentioned Adobe study looked at what consumers look for when they were using TikTok as a search engine. The top searches were grouped into new recipes, new music, DIY tips, fashion advice, workout routines, and a host of other ones. But it goes to show that those aren't necessarily direct commercial or product searches that people are making that often lead to quick conversions.
Yeah, and I think that's a massive point in it as well. For anyone that's saying this one channel is the bee's knees and everyone needs to be on it and it's dominating and everything else is dead, could well be for TikTok. If you're selling fast fashion, if you're selling cheap beauty, cosmetics and that kind of thing, the sort of stuff you'd see on a quick video, a short form video, and be like, oh, that looks cool, some weird kitchen gadget and stuff, and then you just buy it on impulse. It is really effective for those guys. Obviously, I don't want to just condemn TikTok to only being teenagers. I know it's the audience has got a lot broader and across all age ranges now, but I think when considering these arguments for and against any sort of absolutist, this is now the only platform. It's also important to consider who you are. If you take the opposite of that, which is you're selling £30,000 engagement rings, you then just tip into just marketing it, and wherever you go, it's just a touch point. When the perceived value of an item goes up, whether that's on its kind of technical specifications, its cost, or whatever else, the amount of touch points required in theory to make a conversion massively go up. Again, TikTok probably is part of that. If your audience exists there, why not? But they're not going to see it. They're not just going to convert off, 10 TikTok videos. Oh, this engagement ring company's got the funniest content. I'm going to spend £30,000 just there. Like, that's not how it works, is it? So again, considering who you are, how many touch points are involved in a purchase, involved in people kind of becoming aware of an issue that leads to you as a product, then at that consideration stage, zoning in on you as opposed to your competitors, they all involve marketing touch points or various other things. So yeah,
it seems people really enjoyed TikTok because of the digestible format. Often, like, products or videos will encapsulate kind of mini stories or quite personal reviews, which I think are really valued. I will increasingly see brands make more use of. However, TikTok does go somewhat against Google EAT principles, and that same Adobe study actually found TikTok to be weak in authority and trustworthiness of the content. So people might be beginning the search initially to find out a little bit more about a product. However, those same people aren't finding the content that they're digesting particularly trustworthy.
Yeah, you can believe that, right? I mean, I don't know if you've seen some of the crypto TikToks out there where it's got like the one person pretending like they're two people having a conversation and talking about some random crypto you've never heard of. I mean, like, this is a bit snaky looking. Obviously, the younger and less experienced you are, the probably more likely you are to buy it. I liken a lot of it. I think the strongest bit of TikTok is still that influencer element. And I liken it almost to in the e-commerce world in Google, where you've got media who have like the best lists, so like best trail running shoes. They're typically third-party owned articles, and they'll review, like Ep.1 or whatever it's called, and like Runner's World. Mainly publications who are set up to earn revenue through affiliates and ad traffic are really the only ones that can make that sort of content where they're comparing different brands. Like if I owned a trail running shoe brand, if I was Salomon, and I made a list of best trail running shoes, it's either going to be just me listing all of the Salomon trail running shoes, or like, what are you going to do? You're going to start listing all your competitors on there as well? Like, obviously not. And even if you did, everyone would be like, you're full of shit. That's obviously not. You're too biased to make that sort of thing. So I think TikTok really works in the affiliate space because of that, because they can have a slightly more perceived non-biased position. That's a clunky way of saying it, but hopefully it makes sense. An example that I saw on TikTok, which I did really like, and I shared it to my wife the other day, was a list of books that someone had read last year and thought were really good. And 3 of the 10 were ones that I'd read and also thought were really good. So it was trust by association, I suppose. And I'd gone like, well, I really like those 3, and they've just listed another 7. So I said it to my wife, like, we'll probably like these because there's some similarities there, right?
Yeah.
Situations like that, I think is really, really useful for.
As well, TikTok's algorithm is set. It prioritizes user engagement over anything else. Someone who makes a really diligently and informative product guide, like you've explained, might not do as well as somebody who's like spinning around on a go-kart listing off their favourite pairs of shoes. Who do you trust? Like, it's like the flash of the pan, or the person who put loads of time researching in something, but TikTok's going to prioritise the person spinning around and just being really engaging.
It is, yeah, and I'd question how effective that person is at actually generating sales. Again, if you're like an e-commerce brand and you'd put 100% of your marketing budget into the guy on a roundabout with the back wheel of the scooter on it flying off, going like, these trainers are the best. Yeah, and probably get loads of views because everyone would be like, wow, look at that idiot. But they'd have no idea that he was talking about trainers during it, kind of thing. They're just like, this looks funny. The numbers might be small on the first one you mentioned, a few 100,000 people. Less people might see it, but a few might actually convert off that. So what do you actually want? Do you want a social report that goes, look at this, it's amazing?
Nikki Slater, an SEO consultant, previously head of SEO at McCann Manchester, with over 10 years working in SEO, had a pretty good take on LinkedIn of this study. She said the following: Adobe has conducted a study still based on a relatively small sample size, I would say, 808 customers, 251 business owners, but with results that sound much more plausible and measured by the claims of 40% of Gen Zers prefer TikTok as a search engine, and TikTok is about to take all the market share from Google. It's interesting, the main question here is, have you ever used TikTok as a search engine? As a matter of course. Whilst TikTok can be useful part of a person's search journey, it can also be utterly useless. To boot, the study found the greatest problem with TikTok was converting engagement into sales.
how many times has this happened with different social platforms, with different bits of tech and things like that? If you were to look at the digital world 8 months ago, and still to a large degree now, everyone was saying that ChatGPT is going to be like the one-stop shop for the internet. And they were like, oh, I don't even need to bother doing anything. I was just load up ChatGPT and ask it, and it tells me. And you've got the kind of doomsayers who are just like, this will be the only thing, which is in line with all of internet culture, right? We don't go on the internet. We don't really like nuance. We just like these kind of black and white summaries and headlines of things. They might be right. Maybe TikTok will be the only thing that we use. I think it's highly unlikely. Only time will tell. And when it comes to marketing for kind of commerce purposes, it's just something you've got to consider within your marketing mix. Again, consider who you are, like what the products do you sell, where do my audience exist? Probably at least some of them are on TikTok. Does that outweigh everything else? If so, make it your primary channel. It sounds like it'd be tricky though, because not many people want to buy products there. I think it's more realistically used as part of a multi touch point scenario where you're doing really engaging content. Like if they like a brand, like, you know, we've talked a lot about purpose driven brands and whatever else you want to call them, doing really well at the minute, particularly with younger audiences. So do you really engage in TikTok content? And then you want to be looking at retargeting. You want to get them to a place where they do actually spend money and convert them at some other point, if not there.
It's really great, like specific niche use cases, particularly at like awareness or in sometimes consideration stages. My bet for the future is that, okay, we've got this, people have discovered this really useful, digestible content format. Is in the future, you're going to see websites implementing that similar style content on landing pages in blogs, etc., opposed to like having a lengthy bed buying guide. You have a reputable source come in, shoot a video that you can get all the information or a bulk of the information they might need in a minute. That then falls into a better user experience. So I don't think it's all just going to suddenly be hosted on TikTok. I think that content format is going to migrate onto other areas that exist within that user journey. It's not that TikTok is great, it's that the content on there can be very useful, and that's what I think brands will start to take away.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's with guides, and again, if the perceived value, technicality of a product is high in the user, I still think there's a lot of value in on-site or whatever your platform is, guides to explain it, to go like, it is a complicated choice. Here is an explanation of this complicated thing, using the kind of the bed example that you gave, you know, the difference between like different types of material and whether it's sprung or not and things like that. They typically cost upwards of $1,000. So there is place for a fairly comprehensive kind of overview of that. But with the bed example and TikTok, you know, if I like sleep and there was consistently an account that talked about like little things you could do in the bedroom, like different ways you can put your bedside table, and like lighting advice and color advice, and did you know like this type of curtain helps you sleep better, and talking about sad lamps and how to make your bed so it looks whether or not you hoover your bed, and you know, just like random little things like that. Beds are a weird one because it's over a kind of 8+ year buy-in cycle, right, for mattresses. But if you were to take that to like books is a really good one because you want more of it, and it's where social does really well because it's repeatable stuff. Same with makeup and fast fashion, but apply that to a similar with fashion, like different ways of like styling certain things. Like I think that was on your list of like top genres of content, right? Would be like fashion advice. So if you've got an account that's regularly pumping out little tidbits, you follow them and you're like, oh yeah, I love this stuff, and then they're dropping products, and occasionally it's that kind of, it's a war of attrition, right? You're just wearing that person down with stuff that they enjoy.
Yeah, TikTok's going to be it's an enhancement to a web experience. It's not going to be the end point that we're all moving towards. It's another stopping point for a user. What would a low input, high value strategy look like given users changing search preferences?
I mean, my argument there would be it's no change since forever. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, however long it was, we could have been sat here talking about, you know, now Ask Jeeves isn't the main kind of search engine. What other ways to be marketing? I think it still comes down to that idea of where does your audience exist? Where do they exist at different times of their purchase journey? And if it's more kind of question and answer based stuff, if it's more consideration, if it's not just kind of like here's a list of products, what are the questions that people have or the problems that people have that lead them eventually to get into your product? So like, you know, I've trail running. My knees hurt, so I Google knee pain when trail running, and it says like go and do gait analysis. Absolute bollocks that, by the way, if you've never done it. Go do gait analysis and they'll sell you some overpriced shit. But like I just thought my knees hurt. I thought it was because I had bad knees. And it was then I Googled it and went, oh no, because I've got the wrong type of shoes, or I've not got enough support in whatever way. And that'll then lead me down another path. So like, and where am I going at all of those different points? And then just trying to appear there. So if it's TikTok, if it's Google's SGE for certain types of questions, I expect you'll see that the search generative experience will appear for more of some types of queries than others. So, figuring out what they are and adjusting accordingly. I don't think there's one broad stroke version you can give to every single brand, because if you did that, that would be the end of days, because every e-commerce store would just be this anonymous. Everyone's got the same USPs and the same delivery and the same amount of reviews and things like that. There's bits that make all of us different, and that appeals to different types of person. So your marketing should be focused on getting in front of them first. You look at a really commonplace journey for a lot of e-commerce sites where they'll start with AdWords, or they'll start running meta ads because they've got funding but they've got no brand, and so they'll go, okay, I'm going to go on one of those and I'm just going to absolutely blitz it. And as I start seeing ROAS or a return on investment through that singular channel, I'm then going to look to diversify and try and capture them at other points. Typically that will be from a kind of really salesy message, and then you start to expand as the brand expands into more of the consideration and awareness stuff.
How do brands future-proof given alterations to the search landscape in 2024?
Build a bunker. It's what all the rich folks are doing, aren't they? Down in Davos, they've got a little underground bunker. No, what I just said about diversification, we can't know anything for certain. So all we can do is diversify. Again, going back to that example, you see a lot of young brands who are over-reliant on paid media as their only marketing channel, and the ones who are self-aware enough are making efforts to diversify away from that. So they always have paid as an option, and they can kind of turn on the tap, turn off the tap, typically SEO or organic social or whatever it is. They try and diversify away from that. So eventually, in the same way as you look at investing or anything where there's a lot of risk, you want your fingers in a few pies, eggs in a couple of baskets at least. So yeah, diversification.
How is it you're going to unite these teams? You got your search team, whatever that consists of in your organisation. You might have your social team, or even just a person running your social media. How is it you're going to get these people on the same page so that a user has a positive web experience?
I'd say this is a problem pretty much exclusively for like big, well-established departmental brands, right? Because when you look at startups, quite often they've got like a jack of all trades doing everything. They're doing the social, the emails, they're responsible for organic, they're doing a lot. So it's easier to coordinate when there's one of you. I think for the larger brands, the biggest problem from my own experience of talking to a lot of them is just that they are siloed to heck to some extent. And these companies, no, it didn't end well. The ones that I'm thinking of, but they literally had their content team was in Wales, their social team was in London, and then they had like up in Edinburgh, they had the technical guys, and they did like never the three had met, and they didn't end so well for them. But I think for those whom this is an issue, I think the communication, I imagine, would be a great start for a lot of them. Quite often seen as just their own thing, like the social guys. It's a really old school view of social, right? And they're the sort of ones who've been like, it's National Cupcake Day, and then you've got like over on the SEO side, they're doing these guides, and then over on the email side, they're doing just random like offers, emails and things like that, and they're all just working completely independently of each other. We probably, as a kind of startup mentality place, we've been around maybe too long to be called a startup now, but our approach where we take on like quarterly topics, quarterly goals, and that aligns with seasonal trends in e-commerce and things like that, just trying to pull it all together into some sort of roadmap or any sort of meaning, and then tackling them in unison is a good approach. It feels like every answer to this question is almost so simple. It feels a bit like condescending to answer, doesn't it? But like, honestly, all of the big brands have had this issue to some extent, which is they just see each channel as their own completely independent thing. And we know, looking at the ones who do well, that it's not, and they are all intertwined. It's just marketing, right?
Yeah.
Just marketing.
I suppose your starting point for that is setting goals from an organisational level, tear down into those small teams, so that any action that is completed by your social team ladders up to the wide overall marketing revenue goals.
Yeah. And I think that can exist with non-like sales messages as well. Like if you're trying to establish again, we talk about the startups really rely on one paid channel looking to diversify. If they're a purpose-driven brand and they want to be known for a particular aspect, so they want to be known for sustainability, or they want to be known as like the leader or knowledge expert in a certain like topic, that can go across channels. Like, it's really obvious with the ones that we've already pinned as primarily awareness channels, so things like TikTok. But with your email, can you be sharing the same content across your email, so you're not just barraging everyone with like offers and discounts and stuff like that? I really like, there's an indoor plant brand called The Stem, and they incorporate their kind of TikTok videos into their guide section, to the consideration section. Again, that's it's not a particularly high value in terms of pounds and pence product, but for indoor plants, when you look at all those like mad monsteras and stuff like that, they can be quite a pain in the arse to keep alive. So I suppose I'd put it in the technical bracket. You've got to consider it quite a lot. Can I keep this thing alive? So it was really useful, and they'd incorporated that TikTok style content into their actual website. They've embedded it when they go to the guide, so it's a uniform look. They get that kind of brand recall wherever you're existing. I imagine if I just sign up their email list as well, they'd be sending out regular kind of tips on how to look after plants and stuff better. So they were a really good example of someone who's doing it well.
Yeah.
Again, probably one that's just got one marketing manager who's responsible for everyone, and that's why it can be so easy for them.
Yeah, your content has to have a similar thread entwined through all of it, and people confuse brand with colours and logos, when actually most of the time it's the things that you're talking about in a consistent fashion. How can all the above tie into building a brand voice that drives ROI? Engage with social, retarget them, be seen in the SERPs, give value.
I think I can attack my brand, do my brand voice attack in a little bit here. So if you look at, so in Google, and let's call them traditional channels, you look at what performs well and algorithmic factors like eat, a lot of that is on like authorship and expertise. And if you look at social and what performs well there, it's people, right? I think where a lot of brands slip up in this kind of stuff is they try and get like the logo to talk to people through their marketing channels, and no one's there for it. No one wants to hear the logo talk. Like some of the ones that I really like, so Percival, who do men's clothing, are really good for this. So even in their like social ads, they've got one of the guys, and I can't remember his name, but he's talking about, they're not the cheapest. It's like 40 quid for a t-shirt. It's not the cheapest. An explanation of like, do we make loads of money at Percival? And he kind of does the breakdown, similar to the naked wines, like the price of a bottle of wine type stuff almost, and go, the t-shirts cost this much, but we use like this really good cotton that it cost us like, that's 15 quid of it. And then we use the like marketing to get it in front of you and things like that. And like I list all this stuff, and then at the end of it goes, that's our margin. But it's like, it's the guy, it's like, Sam or whoever it is, kind of explaining that. I think quite often a lot of like older brands, particularly like the brick and mortar guys, big orgs, move slow, they're not quite comfortable with giving the voice to an actual human quite a lot. And I think they suffer for it. All the ones that I can think of that do really well, it's a person that they've employed because they fit their brand, ethos, but they're not donning the logo voice and just going kind of, at company name, we believe that blah, blah, blah. And as soon as people hear that, they just like advert. We've heard it for decades. We're quite deaf to that logo talking now.
How can an agile framework be a benefit as new search options continue to emerge?
The agile kind of framework, at least part of it, relies on kind of like setting up your goal system, so quarterly goals, or whether they're more frequent or less frequent, whatever they are. That kind of aligns you all to a singular. That's definitely one advantage for those bigger, more clunky and cumbersome types. And then the second side of it would be, obviously, agile typically involves a team of multidisciplined folk. So in that situation, you've got the one goal, which, with the exception of it being do well on TikTok because all the cool kids are on it now, with the exception of that, your bracket is like social. You want to be getting more out of social, and all of a sudden TikTok gets cancelled or something like that, or ChatGPT goes all racist again. It wasn't ChatGPT, was it? Don't lie on me, please, Sam. If for whatever reason one of them just drops off a cliff and then it's a new one, like, it doesn't matter because you've got that multidisciplinary team. you're working to kind of align goals. You're working in kind of quite short sprints, so you're just getting stuff out the door. You're failing fast. You're able to quickly pivot should the need come for it. So I think, yeah, I can't really see. I know marketing leaders and C-suites really like a good old Gantt chart, because they can kind of sit back and they like a good bit of paperwork, right? And they go, well, I know in 12 months' time we're going to be working on this exact thing. We're going to memorize it. When the CEO asks, I can reel it off by memory. Within digital, like the goalposts aren't necessarily moving, but like the football is, like the football is changing. Like it might be a rugby ball or a tennis ball, like depending on, see those as the different channels, as the different algorithms and the updates and what works and what doesn't. It changes so fast that 12 months down the line, who the flip knows? So yeah, agile, which is coincidentally how we operate, is really effective, because it moves with the breeze. You're not held up on these seismic changes of marketing landscape. How convenient. I can't believe we just ended on almost exactly how we work as a question. That's weird coincidence, that.